Hey everybody, welcome to your last paper video. I know you're really excited about that because you're ready for this paper to be over. But let me just say, you guys have done a great job. I've been very impressed with just your ability to figure things out. I've enjoyed talking to everybody as we've had some hiccups and issues, and I'm just proud of you. So be proud of yourself for working so hard. I wanted to go over just some last minute things. Okay, before you turn in this paper, I really want for you to go through each of these things, make sure you're good. So this is a paper checklist that I'm going to post. It has sort of all the different sections, so you can check off that you have them, that you've done it, etc. First thing is your title page. Hopefully everybody has completed their title page. You can check out the Purdue OWL website. I'll show you that in a minute. If you have any APA style questions, because it has a lot of helpful information. All right, you should have a hypotheses section. This is not a normal thing for a paper because normally your hypotheses are just sort of at the end of your introduction, but we don't have an introduction, so that's why we have a hypotheses section. You should have two hypotheses in this section. One that goes along with whatever you did for your independent sample t-test, and another one that goes along with whatever you did for your correlation. Okay, so two hypotheses. They ideally would say something like, I hypothesize that blah, 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 and I hypothesize that blah, blah, blah. Okay, oops, sorry. All right, so then for your method section, all right, you should have a participant section. That was lab one. Make sure you go back and look at all my comments for your lab one that you've addressed those. You should have a measure section. This section's super long. I think you probably remember this from lab two. I have like a little thing here, like a short description for the public image and self-evaluation sections. For every real scale, like published scale, that means all 5 of the big 5 scales, all 3 of the self-compassion scales, and the life satisfaction scale. You should have the number of questions that were used to measure that scale, the anchors, so 1 to 5, 1 to 7, whatever, and strongly disagree, strongly agree. 2 example questions for every single one. Okay, so 2 example questions for extroversion, 2 example questions for agreeableness, there's a lot of example questions, okay? And then new thing for you guys, because you didn't have these when you turned in lab 2, your Cronbach's alphas are gonna have to go in here. So let me just show you really quick. I'm gonna go to insert. I'm gonna have to move my little picture of myself down here. And we're gonna go to insert advanced symbol and pull that up because the alpha symbol is in here. It looks like a little fish, like that, okay? So I'm gonna insert that, close it. All right, so that right there is the alpha symbol. So for every single scale, you would have like alpha equals 0.85 or alpha equals whatever. So just make sure that you're using that actual symbol. Italicized A is not the same thing, okay? Your procedure section. So you guys, I thought I talked about this in lab 2, but I don't know that I did. So let me just really carefully tell you what's in here. It's really short, okay? So the procedure section is just supposed to say like what did the participants do in this study? And for those of you who took this survey at the beginning of the semester, like it wasn't a lot. You just went online and clicked a link and filled out some questions for stats. So that's it. So I would say something like, it could be like participants completed an online survey for class participation, something like that. Okay, but literally a sentence is going to be fine. Just have something there. Do not leave that blank. Normally your procedure section will be a little longer, so keep that in mind for your future papers, but for this one, really short. Results, independent samples t-test and correlation, you should have a section for each of those, right? Where you have your write-up for both of them. Then you should have your discussion section where you walk through your first hypothesis and your findings and your second hypothesis and your findings. We cover the discussion section in Lab 5, okay? References. You need a reference for the 3 big 5 scales. Not 3 big 5, 3 big scales. One of them is the big 5. Then you have the self-compassion scale and the satisfaction with life scale. I included the link here for Purdue OWL, so you could check it out if you wanted some more guidance on what the reference section should look like. I have not been checking your reference sections. Even when you've included them in your lab assignments, I'm not checking them, and there are plenty that are wrong, okay? So please make sure that you go check them. Make sure that you're let me just pull it up really quick so that you can see what I'm talking about. Hold on. Okay, so I'm pulling up Purdue OWL, this little writing lab, formatting a reference list. This is some just basic resources here. Books, chapters, academic articles, things like that. But then you can come over here on the side and be more specific, okay? So it'll talk about author and authors and the rules for those, articles and periodicals, books, other print sources, etc. So if you just click on something and go down here, and it gives you sort of some examples. Make sure that you have your hanging indentation on with these, where everything is indented after the first line. And then you also need to make sure everything's double spaced. I don't think you can really see that here, but if everything is supposed to be double spaced. Let's see. Anyway, there's lots of other resources over here. If you have questions about them, you can come here and look at them. Okay, you go back. All right, so the table, make sure that you're formatting your table just like the example paper. A lot of you guys, when I looked at it, looked like more like all the borders were present again, and you're technically not supposed to have all those borders present. So make sure that it looks like the example paper. Same sort of thing with the figure. Appendix. So for your appendix, you need the box from your t-test that has your means and standard deviations in it. And you need the box from your t-test that has like your t-value, your degrees of freedom, the sig two-tailed, all that, okay? So make sure those are in there. You also need your correlation box from your output, okay? If anybody's having issues with Word and copying, remember that you do have access to Word through Microsoft Office 365. If you just Google UNCP Microsoft Office 365, it'll tell you how to get into that so that you have access to Word. Okay, so hopefully that'll help with some of those issues that we've been having. Okay, let me back up for a minute because I forgot to say something about our self-compassion section up here in the measures. So some of you guys had 6 scales for the self-compassion section, okay? It's not necessarily wrong, because if you go back and you look at the scoring sheet for the self-compassion scale, it does break it down into 6 subscales. But what we ended up doing in Lab 3 was we took all those negative subscales like self-judgment and isolation and over-identification. We took those items and reverse coded them and then basically added them in to their positive counterparts. So for example, instead of having a self-kindness scale with 2 items and a self-judgment scale with 2 items, you now have a self-kindness scale with 4 items. Okay, so make those adjustments here in the measures section. You just need to be talking about the 3 self-compassion scales, and they all have 4 items each, okay? And your alphas that you ran should match up with that. Okay, let me go back down here. Just a couple other things to double check. You should have 2 decimal places for every number, okay? I remember we talked a little bit different about the percentages. I know that was kind of weird for ethnicity and stuff. You can keep those at 1. But then you need 2 decimal places for all the other numbers, okay? Even if the second decimal place is a 0, just put a 0 in. Your p-value does need to have 3 decimal places, a special rule for the p-value. So if it's 0.051, then write 0.051, okay? Don't round it. Alpha symbol. Okay, I just went over that at the top, but use the alpha symbol for all your convex alphas and make sure you go put all those into your measure section before you turn it in. Italicize your symbols. So your M, SD, P, T, and R should all be in italics. The actual numbers that go with those are not in italics. It's just the symbols, okay? Make sure everything in your paper is double spaced, okay? And that's everything. So no extra spaces. I know there's that temptation to like hit enter twice after like sections and stuff, but you don't do that, because then it's like the massive gap between your 2 sections because you're already on double space. So everything's just double spaced, okay? There is no adding in extra spaces after paragraphs, nothing like that, okay? Everything is just straight double spaced. So make sure that you're doing that. And then make sure that you make all the corrections from your labs. So every time you've submitted a lab, in the little comment section, I've made some comments to you. Make sure you're addressing all those comments. I mean, you can get 10 points and have a ton of stuff that you need to change, okay? So just because you might have gotten all the points, that does not mean you didn't have stuff that you needed to change. So please make sure that you're addressing those things, because I have been super lenient on the labs, okay, in terms of all those corrections to make. I sort of like, you've turned it in. If you didn't have a lot of stuff to correct, I've been like, okay, you get all the points. If you had a lot of stuff, I was like, okay, we get most of the points. But on the final paper, there's been so much time to fix this stuff, and you've gotten a lot of instruction. So I'm being much more meticulous with the final paper and making sure that everything's right. And when things are not right, you do lose points for that. Okay, so just make sure that you do everything you can to get it how it should be. Okay, I think that's it. Of course, if you have additional questions, you can ask me. I will be setting up a place on Canvas that says turn your paper in here, right? So there it will be very clear where you submit your paper. So that'll be your final paper. I'm excited for you. I know you're ready for it to be done. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I will help. And I guess that's it. Good luck.